Welcome to the Black Paper. Cheta, I know you to be a very reasonable man. Well,
Thank you.
well, yeah, well, apart from when you're trying to get, but anyway, look, no, don't let me derail. Reasonable man, well studied. You have an MSc or two,
Two.
uh, two MScs. Um, if you had your way, you probably have a PhD because that is kind of person that you are. So, and not just studied in Nigeria, but studied in Nigeria, in the UK, wall flyer. Today you're in the UK, tomorrow you're in
Wait,
US,
wait,
in
wait, wait, wait,
Ghana.
wait, wait. What was this?
Um,
What was this watching this morning?
so I'm coming. So with all these academic prowess and uh, all the accolades you've gathered from your studies, imagine, because I know you have two kids. Imagine one of your children then comes to you and says, "Daddy, I've decided what I want to be when I grow up, and it's an electrician." What would you say?
My first degree was in electrical engineering, so it had better be electrical engineering, not
No, no, I'm talking about
electrician.
electric. I'm
I
saying
know. That's what I
electrician.
said, not electrician. It
Why?
had better. Eh?
Why? Why not?
See, there's a so especially coming to this part of the world. There's an argument to be made about dignity of labor and all of that good stuff. However, given where the family is, my father was the vice chancellor of a university. His father before him was also an academic. The least that is expected of any of my kids is a university degree. It's the bottom line. It's as in you can't go lower than that. It's Nkewo Boalu.
And that is quite an interesting take because, as you know, what we want to talk about today is Andy Burnham's, who's the new PM for those who still don't know. The UK has a prime minister now for what, about almost 1 month. In his second week, he has come out to announce that, in his own words, the hard hat should be valued as much as the graduation cap. And by this, he means uh, from 2028, 14-year-olds will be able to choose whether they continue in the path of university education or whether they continue in the path of apprenticeship. But whilst before they get to that choice, apprenticeship will be woven into the classroom so that students will be able to go on some apprenticeship courses, as it were, a few days a week. But ultimately, the message is this: no longer will it be said that the most effective or the surest way uh, to have a good living after graduation should be a university degree. Now, children as young as 14 can choose if, like in the case of the example I gave, somebody wants to grow up to become an electrician or a plumber or a bricklayer, or what are these other, but or any of the handy jobs, as we like to call it. And the question isn't so much as will it work for the UK, because studies have shown that it will. A lot of people are behind this. The question is, for our community, will it work? So Cheta, do you want to take us to the background of this announcement, and then we can just have that argument as to whether I should not just knock my child on the head if he comes to me and says he wants to become a plumber tomorrow?
Yeah, so let's start with let's start from the end in that respect. I will knock my child on the head if if that happens. Um, and so I understand and appreciate. I mean, this at the start of this holiday, I actually went to mechanic and a few other people to see if I could get my my kid to go to basically apprentice with them, to basically learn to use his hands, as it were. But there are insurance implications because he's not yet 16. So because of that, now I would like him to learn to use his hands. I think it's important. So for example, if certain things get bad in the house, I fix them. In Nigeria, we did it because labor was cheap. So the arguments can be made about the internal contradiction that we have, people like us coming from the parts of the world that we're coming from, where in our neck of the woods, this kind of jobs that you do with your hands are not very highly valued. When I first came to the UK in 2005, within a month of arrival, where I was staying, and I was flat sharing with Violet, a friend of mine who she had also gone to Uniben. Our plumbing broke down. I opened the yellow pages at the time. Those things don't exist anymore. Google has taken over. I opened the yellow pages and called a plumber. The plumber came, looked at it, and then he said, before he even started fixing, he said his call-out fee was £50. And I screamed. But he was already there, so I was already obligated to pay the £50. I opened the yellow pages and truly it was there, but in small print, call-out fee £50. So after the guy fixed it, I went to a DIY shop not too far from us. So this was in Brent's Cross. Went to a DIY shop and then bought tools. And after that, anything that's happened in the house, I tried to fix it first. It's only when I would go back to my books, all of that stuff, try to fix it. It's only when the thing was beyond my capacity that I would grudgingly call someone. As of that time, it was much later on that I realized that, in the UK, when you are renting, some major faults are actually the landlord's responsibility. But the thing is, the skills that I learned during that period have proven useful to me even now in my own house. So I would really like my son, especially, but also my daughter, to learn to use their hands, to learn to, if something goes wrong, you don't start running around looking for somebody to fix it. Because in this part of the world, these people are reasonably paid. However, there's a cap to how high, in reality, most of them can go. Yes, you have the occasional people like David Skinner who break through and become members of parliament. That lady from the Green Party who Hannah is the first name. Hannah Spencer. Yes, she's a plumber. She's also an electrician. You have the occasional ones, but the truth is, the highest echelons of society have always belonged to the highly educated. I don't know if you read Michael Gove's article that was lambasting Andy Burnham.
Yeah.
That was the point that he was trying to make. And in many respects...
But that article was also... It was
dishonest.
It was dishonest. It was snobbery at its highest, saying it was bring back stupid.
I admit to that. The problem is that many of these people are dishonest in their arguments, or disingenuous, I think is a better word, in their arguments. But nevertheless, there's a seed there that's and there's a kernel of truth in the fact that without a university education, so imagine in a legal firm, someone finished secondary school and then entered into a legal firm to apprentice. And then while someone else went to university, became a barrister, and then comes in as a silk. So these are the things that you have to take into account. Now, in my own case, removing the bigger picture, in my own case, because of the family history, there are certain things that will be deemed unacceptable. I mean, the only place where I think everybody can remove I is if he turns out to be a wildly talented sportsman, and suddenly at 19 he's representing so in my kid's case, either England or the US or Nigeria are dragging for him to come and play for them in the World Cup. At that
And
point, if he says he doesn't want to go to university, we will sit down and we'll say no problems. All of us will be following you to watch the ball.
in
But
fact,
after you finish,
after
after
he
you
has
retire
even
from
paid
the
off your mortgage.
yeah, but in that case, I will give him the example of Tony Adams. When you finish the ball, you shall still go back to university.
So, Cheta, so it seems to me that the argument, at least from our community, is not one of practicality, but one of optics. But let's, even before we go
I
into that,
disagree, but go on.
but even before we go into that, let's look at what this policy is saying. And the Burnham has announced the biggest overhaul of English education system in 15 years. So in the first instance, it's pertinent to note that this is England. So it's not happening in the other devolved nations. The central promise is to stop prioritizing the university route and put technical training on an equal footing with academic qualifications. And that's something to, so if it's on equal qualification, so you have a technical qualification, someone might argue that, well, you went to university, I went to a technical college, and we came out with the same qualifications, but that's something to hold on to. And this will start from September 2028, when 14-year-olds in year 10 will be able to combine core academic studies with technical education linked to local job opportunities. They will also be able to get work experience with local employers. The sectors on offer include advanced manufacturing, AI, digital and technology, clean energy, life sciences, construction, health and care, and the creative industries, depending on local strengths and where the jobs are created. So on one hand, Cheta, we can argue, especially when you look at AI, advanced manufacturing. I know that I made the example of the plumber and the electrician, and that is with construction and all that. But there's also creative industries, health and care. So on one hand, whilst this is an educational an attempt to revolutionize the education system, it's also an attempt, one might argue, to ensure that there's a steady or people are prepared for live jobs when they come out, rather than okay, so let's take the case of Nigeria for instance, Cheta. You go to a bank, which is arguably the largest private sector employer in the country, and you see someone.
The banks are about the largest.
Yeah.
My most recent column in Financial Nigeria talked about the fact that, and this is one of the contradictions that's actually that actually is also showing up here. So
no, sorry.
Okay, please finish. No,
so when you go to the bank, for instance, you will see the probability of seeing someone who actually studied banking and finance, as we call it in Nigeria, is low. You would see people who studied agricultural sciences, electrical engineering, almost everything. I mean, I worked briefly in the bank and I studied history and international relations because people were running after
jobs.
You
doing my job.
Well, I'm in politics.
No, I mean the analysis of politics, political economy.
Well, we do low-level analysis, don't we, in our head? But anyway, so Cheta, the argument can be made that what Burnham is doing is saying, rather than go out and look for jobs because you want to pay your rent, and then you take whatever job, and which means people can start at a very low level because they have to learn. You start learning for these jobs right from 14-year-old, so that when you come out at 18, 20, whatever, you're a specialist and you can command higher pay.
So again, the point is, and I would quote Vanessa Feltz, because I spent the whole of Saturday listening to it. This topic was really huge. So it was talked about on Nick Ferrari, it was talked about on James O'Brien, it was talked about by Sheila Fagerty, was not around last week, so it was talked about by Asmir Mehr. It was talked about over the weekend by Matt Fry, Alimin Miraji, Vanessa Feltz, and what was that last lady's name? I'm looking at her face now. I really like the way she presents her show. I don't know why I've forgotten the name. Anyway, it's a huge topic, and of course, it has divided opinion. Now, I think that the Nigeria example is not the best example, because the Nigeria example actually pins into why a lot of people leave countries like Nigeria. So, the preeminent employer among companies listed in the Nigerian Stock Exchange is Dangote Cement, which has 21,500 employees roughly. Then after that,
in
you
a country
have
of how many million?
Yeah, exactly. Then after that is a plethora of banks. So you have First Bank, you have a UBA, you have Access Bank, then you have Julius Berger, and then you have Zenith Bank, GTB, Airtel, Sterling Bank, Fidelity Bank before MTN. Now, the reason I know this very well is that my most recent column I maintain a column in Financial Nigeria, and this was precisely what I talked about. Now, the top 10 companies in Nigerian stock exchange collectively directly employ just under 89,000 people collectively. That's all of these companies that I named. So it goes into the heart of, because it's something that is beginning to show up in the UK. So I get it, and I get what Andy Burnham is trying to say. Basically, the UK at the moment has a problem with what they call NEETs, not in education, employment, or training. Is it not in employment, education, or training?
Education,
whatever.
employment, or training. 1 million young people.
So it's basically about 1 in 7 people ages 16 to 24, and they are drawing a connection to the insistence on university education, which started under Tony Blair. And in all honesty, there's a correctness in that argument, especially given that the fact that the UK is now a post-industrial economy. So you can't have everybody rush into university education. I get it. But nevertheless, it now brings it now risks the economy or the whole country becoming a sort of rat race or a crabs in a barrel. Because, like in my case, I have given the history why for my kids university education is non-negotiable. However, if I want to expand it to all of us who are migrants from our part of the world, expats as I prefer to call it, from our part of the world, you have to look at a particular nuance that affects our own people. Nigeria is the 6th largest contributor of immigrants and immigrant population to the UK. But in Nigeria itself, the rate of tertiary education is 9%. So, for ease of calculation, 9% of our population has tertiary education. That's 18 million people. And then of that 18 million, 312,000 have moved to the UK. And invariably, that 312,000 draws from that 18 million who have all been university educated. So think about it from the mindset point of view. For us, university education is non-negotiable. We are not, and I'm saying this conscious of the fact that it brings a risk of creating a division. We are not the Windrush group of migrants. the group of people who were brought to the UK during the Windrush generation were brought to fill the needs that the UK had at the time, which was they needed builders. The UK had been shattered by the Germans during the Second World War. Think about it. Coventry, for example, had been completely wiped off the map. They needed to rebuild all of that. It's not an accident that the Midlands had a disproportionate number of people from the Caribbean moved there, because those were the places that London needed urgent rebuild, but the Midlands needed Midlands bore a disproportionate share of the bombings by the Germans. So the people who came were people for whom university education was esoteric. It was not part of the mindset. But by the time the UK was opening the gates for our own generation of people to come, the people that they number one, they had made migration so expensive that it was only the upper middle class in our country that could afford it. So every one of us who came, there were quite a number of us who came who were very happy to accept jobs that are below their station in life, as it were. That are so people who were working in banks in Nigeria and then going into care jobs in the UK. But those people will not accept their children being brought down like that. It's unacceptable for them. That's the mindset. Now, one of my fears with the policy that's Andy Burnham and Lucy Powell are pushing is not in the fact that it's not in the sense that the policy has does not have reason behind it. My fear is in the implementation. What guarantees do we have that it will not be disproportionately Black and ethnic minority children who will be put in this stream or whatever and told from the get-go that, oh, your future is not in higher academic achievements? I mean, look at what is happening with the Black academic in Cambridge right now, Mr. Ade. Professor Ade, that is being accused of plagiarism, and he's saying not unreasonably that it is racism. And when it was talked about on radio the other day, the question was asked, and I was glad that it was not a Black presenter that was bringing up the issue, but the question was asked: do we hold Black, especially Black academics or Black people, to higher standards of achievements? Because it was clear to me, by the time I listened to that conversation very well, it was clear to me that was what was happening with Professor Ade. I'm not sitting down here to say that he's entirely innocent. That will be determined by whatever body, but you cannot run from the fact that
he had been cleared previously.
But the problem refused to go away.
Yeah,
but the problem, and that's the point.
I see. Look, I know. Yes, we can't talk about. We must refrain from talking about ongoing cases, but from all indications, from what you see, is as you say, Cheta, the man is being held. If this was a white man who had achieved so much, having overcome not being able to talk at an early age, overcome all that to this academic success, movies would be written about him. He would be a character in some TV show. He will become a legend. But is some Black guy who has achieved this, therefore he must have plagiarized, even if he had been cleared of plagiarism. That's the way it seems to me anyway. Sorry for buttoning.
Well, it's what it is. So that's my own big fear in all of this. That we are going to end up in a situation where they would basically find a way to keep ethnic minorities away from the universities. So, and there's one of the things that all of us have complained about, which is with regards to our children. You are at home telling your kids that that's okay. You need to be ambitious. You need to study. Then they go to school and their teachers are telling them, "Oh, you don't need to put too much effort. This is." It happened to my daughter. When we were in hall, As in, basically, a teacher said, "Oh, you don't need to put so much effort." Like, what kind of nonsense is that, sir?
And I get that, Cheta, and I quite understand. I mean, that's one of the questions that has been uh that's we've even spoken about it. What if it almost becomes like a pipeline of separating the those who should become like a new class, as it were. Because when I saw this, one thing that it got into my head was, remember all these movies, these futuristic, I want to almost say post-apocalyptic movies, where like you think of the Hunger Games, I think it is, or you think of what's the one with this snowplow, whatever, where people are born and restricted to certain, I won't say classes, I'll say guilds. So you see that this is the shoemaking guild for, or whatever, this is the metal making. So it's almost like in cynical hands, this could be a way of saying, right, from 14, we're going to groom you into this guild where this is all you have known, this is all the life you have known, from which you cannot depart. Whereas what we have now is somebody goes to university, goes to, again, with the Nigerian example, you're taught that you don't just go through, pass through university, the university passes through you. So what you are, the broader thing you're learning from the university isn't just your course, but a way of questioning things, of looking at society from a critical point of view, which means you come out with a degree in history and international relations, but you can work in a bank, for instance, either out of necessity or because you've learned how to just deconstruct problems and use your brain to think about them. That is one on one hand. But on the other hand, Cheta, and we have to play both sides of the argument here. What if there's some sincerity behind it, and it's not, and it's not in a cynical way, and I do believe there's sincerity anyway, but let us say there's no cynicism in shifting away different students from ethnic backgrounds, and our, no, hang on. And what we then have is, because of our insistence that children must go to university and the jobs of the future are in technical backgrounds, do we then say that there's a chance, or there's a probability that we price ourselves out, or our children out of future technical jobs that are more prevalent than education jobs, especially given the rise of AI and how AI is taking, I mean, even you have mentioned before, how it's making your job easier as an analyst.
And how some people in my office resigned and we didn't replace them because AI can't do what they do. I accept. See, all of that is we're globally we're at an inflection point. Mm? And there's going to be more value in the jobs that AI cannot do, which is jobs that you use your hands, and then in the creative spaces, acting, and then in professional sports, and of course, even in the military, if you are following the Russia-Ukraine war closely, or the Iran war closely, but the Russia-Ukraine war more than there's a space that's used to be filled by soldiers that drones powered by AI are taking now. So
cheap drones.
So we're at an inflection point in history. I admit that. However, in response to your point about cynicism, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I have not for 1 second bejudged Andy Burnham or Lucy Powell about whether they're being cynical. I don't think they're being cynical. I think they're genuinely being sincere. It is the implementation. They are not, Andy Burnham is not going to be the one that will start going to various classrooms in the country to make sure that it is the truly best students that are encouraged. And encouragement is where it starts from. Because you might have a student that has a lot of potential. If that student's teacher does not encourage the students, that students will never achieve that potential. So it starts from there. And when you have a potentially racist situation, you cannot legislate for whether a teacher will come thinking that already with the mindset that that I mean, Owen Jones went to Clacton the other day, and was talking with people who were, of course, the by-elections are calling. Oh, by the way, congratulations to you Labour guys for wiping the floor with reform in Manchester. Um, Owen Jones went to Clacton. I was talking with people, and then there was one guy who, with all the arrogant confidence of an idiot, was saying that, oh, sub-Saharan Africans have an average IQ of 66. So I said, I'm quoting him now. I am more intelligent than anybody from sub-Saharan Africa. So why should we bring them into the country? Imagine that kind of person being a teacher, or somebody with that mindset being a teacher, walking into a class. The most naturally intellectually gifted person in that class is a child of sub-Saharan African descent. But because that person already believes that everybody from sub-Saharan Africa has an IQ of 66 or below, it doesn't matter what that child does, he will discourage that child. And so what this does is it makes our job slightly harder. And remember where I started from. The class of people we come from ultimately is the class that, for us, education up to tertiary level is non-negotiable.
Yeah, it's a bare minimum.
Think about the Indians. So I think I want to make a comparison here. India has about 14% of their population roughly 14% of their population tertiary educated. Same as Pakistan, same as Bangladesh. Then you think about OECD countries. Ireland is about 60%. Lithuania is about 60%. The US is 50%. There are US, France about 50%. Those are their rough figures. So they already have a higher base of university educated people than we do, those of us from the global south. So we cannot afford the risk of diluting that base because we say, oh, our children should become plumbers or electricians. No disrespect to plumbers or electricians. I started this by pointing out that the big lacuna in our neck of the woods is the fact that plumbers and electricians are so poorly paid that nobody wants to do those. They are good professions, but and I've remembered the name of the last LBC presenter on the talk of Natasha Devon. I really like her, and so I like the way LBC kind of balances their. You say one presenter comes from the left, the other one comes from the right. So, for example, Morning Belts, Nick Ferrari is clearly right wing, James O'Brien is clearly from the left. You have that same dynamic. Sheila Fegarty, not Sheila Fegarty,
Is it the Ian guy that ran for? Ian guy that ran for MP?
I'm not talking. I'm talking of the Saturday the ladies who present on Saturday,
right.
Saturday evening. So Natasha Devon, clearly from the left, presents after this lady who comes from the right. So you get both sides of the argument, and you make your choices. And I found that on this argument, again, because of my personal situation, I am leaning more towards the right wing side of it. I get the left wing side of it, which is where the Burnham and co are coming from. I'm leaning more towards the right wing side, but not for the reasons that those ones are espousing.
You know what is, I don't even think, to be fair, I don't think it's a right versus left wing, because remember when the first target for university, 50% university education came, it was a left wing government. It was Tony Blair, who had this. And I think Keir Starmer was going to bring it down to about 25% or thereabouts. But so I don't think this argument is really a right versus left wing argument. It's more a needs versus opportunities thing, and who sees that need. But I also, what I agree is that there are those who would look at it from a privileged point of view, knowing that no matter what happens, whether you're a carpenter or a plumber or whatever, we have the network. We would always bring you in. And, and I think we're talking about this earlier. When I said, when Andy Burnham announced, because he announced it formally in Derby, which is quite interesting. In the Alstrom factory, surrounded by a host of um of apprentices. Oh, and a bit of trivia. The mic, there was a video that was done by Baggy Shankar, who's an MP for Derby South, where
Who
he was talking
interviewed?
about who interviewed, yes, and he was speaking with Andy Burnham. The mic they were using, that mic, it was my mic, so you pay respect. My mic has interviewed the Prime Minister.
Which one?
And there's
This one that you're using.
no, the small mic.
So we should show
So
this one here. No,
no,
but
I'm going to auction
wait,
that mic.
wait. Now you're thinking like an Igbo man.
I'm going
We
to
should
auction that the mic that has interviewed the Prime Minister. But
his
anyway,
fingerprint is on it.
his fingerprint is on it.
So dust that thing, and then give me. At least I'm very good at auctions. So give me, I will sell it for you. And then we shall listen. So I take 60%, you take 40%.
Anyway, look.
I'm the one doing the hard work of the selling.
Who is doing that? Were you the one that put it in the Prime Minister's hands?
The hard work is getting people to buy it.
Better behave yourself this morning. So yeah, so I was saying that the PM was surrounded by a host of apprentices, and because I had my black people hat on, I was thinking, okay, let's see how many black apprentices are there. And in the frame, there was none. I think it was in a later picture that I saw that there was one black guy tucked way at the back. But this is not something you would want to attribute. You can't attribute it to an exclusion of black people. What you can attribute it to is that our people are not necessarily interested in apprenticeship. So are we already, as I said before, one, pricing ourselves out, but also we're playing against a system where I know people who would, when you ask them, oh, how did you get into this place? How did you get apprenticeship? Oh, yeah, my boyfriend's mom or whatever. The term or the polite term would be that, they know how to network. Whilst we're there, nothing. In Nigeria, say must know somebody, but let's call it network. So whilst we're up against a group of people that know how to network, and you cannot begrudge them for that because they understand it perfectly. But we're still thinking that all I need is to be armed by a university degree, and all I go into the world, knock on many doors, there was something on Twitter where someone was talking about getting about 800 emails that I just kept saying, unfortunately, we can't take you for this job. So you persevere through
that thing. Is soul destroying.
It's soul destroying. And then you also pass on that perseverance to your kids. Don't worry, you will eventually get that job. Meanwhile, the person that your kid went to school with at 14 went into an apprenticeship system and is already making, as I said, you're knocking on your second door, he has bought his own house because they started building credit a long time ago. So my argument, and I definitely see where we're coming from, but I still think that this isn't something to be
scoffed at.
Be scoffed at. But having said that again, Cheta, because we're on the Black People, this is a podcast aimed at our communities. Having said that, I don't know that if my son comes and says, I want to be a plumber, I'll be like, yay, here's an apprenticeship. Will I get them into an apprenticeship to see how they can learn stuff? Definitely. I mean, I hope to get them into an apprenticeship scheme. But then, as you've said, strongly encourage them. Perhaps then a university degree becomes a backup. That's on one hand. But the other thing I want to ask, Cheta, is looking at the crisis, the student loan crisis, or we can call it a crisis at this point, where people graduate from universities, if you take on the student loan with at least a 40,000 pound debt to your name, that you now have to start paying off, and increases, do you think that the awareness of a student loan might be enough to shift the dial for people in our communities about saying, you know what, maybe my kid should go on an apprenticeship route? Or do you think we're just going to be stubborn in that in our
I,
family,
I, I think
we
we're
must have
I
the.
think we're likely to be stubborn, especially considering. So this is where there's a culture clash here that we need to be aware of. We tend as a people to pay school fees for our kids. So the first time I applied, 21 years ago, when I first applied for a visa to come to the UK to to my master's, I had I said my dad had paid the fees. I was refused the fees on the first application. And one of the reasons that was given was they couldn't believe that my dad was paying my school fees. It was actually a reason that, and my dad wrote them a stinker in reply, like what nonsense are you talking about? And so culturally, I mean, I cannot go back to my own way and say, "Oh, my son wants to do to do university up to this level, and I'm letting him go to go and take student. Like, what do you exist for?"
Mm,
So again, did they cut your left hand that you cannot walk to pay for your son's education? You understand? So there's that cultural thing that we must take into account.
mm,
So I don't again putting in context the numbers that I quoted earlier about the people who the kind of people who move from our neck of the woods to this part. The university education is not something that we are going to I don't believe that our people will compromise on. Now, we also have to think of the message that this sends. The UK competes for global talent. So let's go back to the picture that I painted with respect to university graduates from OECD countries. Basically, these countries are countries that focus on high tech and the likes. So they basically want highly educated people. If the UK is quote and unquote, because it's not about what people will see the headline and will draw conclusions. Not everybody is going to try to dig into the data to understand that okay, there's a high proportion, 1 in 7 people people of a certain age are needs and all of that stuff. They will just hear what is being said and they would come to the conclusion that the UK is deprioritizing university education. The UK does not appreciate academics. From our point of view, the loss of status, potential loss of status, oh, this person is an illiterate. Because that's where our people will interpret it. It's real. A policy that says university is not for everyone, it may be pragmatic for some people, but when you think of a family that has sacrificed everything to get to this part of the world, it feels like a betrayal of that sacrifice. We now remove the rest of Africa or the Caribbean, other black communities. Now let us talk about Nigerians. We tend to have among the highest rates of tertiary education anywhere we go. It speaks to the fact when you compare that with the fact that it is 9% of our total population at home that are tertiary educated, it tells you about the people. Again, buttressing the point I made earlier, it tells you about the group of people who are leaving Nigeria. So what we will hear, and I refuse to shift from that position, is you are telling my kids not to be ambitious. Hello. Never.
And to go and be a common electrician.
I don't know. Again, I don't.
No. I'm not talking. I'm not saying that that's what they are. It's our mindset.
It's the mindset. Yes.
And I'll tell you something.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah. No, it's a mindset. I know. Look, I have mad respect because I know electricians that are balling, that are making money that will make your eyes water, and they would rather not do anything. I had someone come do my boiler, and he was complaining, oh man, that he's just, I mean, not, so I won't even say complaining. No, that like, man, we have to do this, that he's just come from a holiday, la. One thing led to the other, that he just spent 8K to take the family on the vacation. And I'm like, you did what? Then to your call out story, the most expensive battery I've ever changed cost me £100. And that's
Car
because
battery.
No. Finger battery.
Eh?
So my boiler, the heating wasn't working. I had checked everything, checked the electricals, done every single thing. Nothing was working. I had looked at the app, installed, uninstalled, did everything. Nothing was working. I reluctantly, after a day, decided to call the gas engineer. My man comes and he checks the hob on the wall. The battery was dead. Now, I didn't think the battery because I had changed the battery not so long ago. But his call out was £100, Cheta.
I feel betrayed. You should have called me.
I changed a battery, finger battery, for £100.
You should have called me. I would have done it for 99. Saved you £1.
But look, this is an interesting conversation. I think we should put a poll in the show notes to ask people whether they would consider sending their kids or allowing their kids explore the technical education angle rather than a full university angle. Because although I think I know where majority will end up, but it would be good to see how many people say they would not encourage their kids so much. Because again, it's interesting when we look at the rise of the, in quote, alternative industries in Nigeria. You're looking at music.
It's not just Nigeria. Sorry to interrupt you. It's not just alternative industries. Kenya. There's this guy. There's this guy who this because when you said alternative industries, I remembered. So the skits making industry there's this Kenyan guy that's, in short, I will send you.
Is it that guy with the big tie?
Yeah. I think yesterday I spent a good portion of yesterday being unproductive because I was just looking through somebody sent me the one that he did about transportation.
Yes, I saw that.
So
I saw that told with in every skit.
I saw that, and then I started going through his previous skits, and I ended up wasting an hour.
Did you see laughing. The one where if Spider-Woman was African?
Completely accurate. Like,
oh my God. So yeah. So with the rise of the alternative industries, are people already shifting away from non-university educations, and we just don't know it or acknowledge it, or or are people, going to say no, we'll stick to it? So it will be interesting to see what the poll says.
Yeah, it will be. But I think it's important to point out that within Nigeria, at least, almost all the most successful skit makers are university graduates. I think it's important to point that out.
And I think they went to certain universities.
Yeah, I can't think of any who is not a university graduate. So,
okay,
yeah,
okay, Chet, I think that's a good place to draw the curtain on this episode. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very interesting conversation, and we would like to hear.
So interesting that we didn't take our usual break.
Yes, see, it gets more and more interesting on the black paper. But I'll see you on the next one, Cheta.
See you on the next one.